What if I told you that some of the biggest decisions you've ever made weren't actually your decisions? The way you react when someone disappoints you, the way you handle conflict, the kind of people you're attracted to, even the voice inside your head that constantly judges you. What if most of it was written long before you were old enough to question it? Psychologists have spent decades studying a disturbing pattern. Not only do most people inherit their parents' eye color or facial features, they also inherit emotional habits, relationship patterns, money beliefs, fears, and even the mistakes that quietly shape their entire lives. The frightening part? Most never realize they're repeating them. They spend years promising themselves, "I'll never become like my father. I'll never treat people the way my mother did." Only to wake up one day, hearing the same words coming out of their own mouth, making the same decisions, living the same emotional story. But here's the fascinating part. A very small percentage of people, roughly what researchers would call the psychologically self-aware minority, manage to break the cycle. Not because they were luckier, not because they had perfect parents, but because they learned something that almost everyone else never does. Today, we're going to explore the hidden psychological patterns that keep 92% of people trapped inside someone else's life, and the 6 things the other 8% quietly do differently. Because once you see these patterns, you'll never look at your own life the same way again. Mistake 1. They mistake familiarity for love. Here's something your brain almost never tells you. It does not automatically search for what's healthy. It searches for what's familiar. That single sentence explains thousands of relationships. Imagine 2 people meeting for the first time. One grew up in a home filled with calm conversations. Arguments happened, but they ended with understanding. The other grew up walking on eggshells. Love existed, but it always came with tension, criticism, silence, unpredictable emotional explosions. Now ask yourself, which relationship will feel normal to each of them? Psychology calls this attachment conditioning. Your nervous system quietly learns, this is what love feels like. The problem is, your nervous system doesn't judge whether that pattern is healthy. It only asks, have I survived this before? That's why some people constantly chase emotionally unavailable partners. Others fall in love with people they need to rescue. Some keep choosing partners who criticize them, not because they enjoy suffering, because suffering feels strangely familiar. Their brain whispers, I know this story. And familiarity creates an illusion of safety. This is one of the cruelest psychological tricks the mind can play. Sometimes, peace feels boring. Healthy communication feels suspicious. Kindness feels unfamiliar, not because something is wrong with those things, but because your childhood taught your nervous system to expect chaos instead. This is why breaking family patterns feels so uncomfortable at first. You're not just changing your habits, you're teaching your brain that calm is safe. And that takes time. The people who escape this cycle begin asking a question most people never ask. Not, why am I attracted to this person? But, why does this feel familiar? That single question has ended toxic relationships, saved healthy ones, and changed entire family trees. But relationships are only the beginning. The deepest patterns aren't found in who you love. They're found in the person you become when life gets difficult. And that's where almost everyone unknowingly repeats the past. Mistake 2. They inherit their parents' inner voice. Most people think they talk to themselves. Psychology suggests something far more unsettling. Many people spend their entire lives listening to someone else's voice. Think about the last time you made a mistake. Maybe you forgot something important, missed an opportunity, embarrassed yourself in front of other people. What happened next? Did your mind quietly say, it's okay, everyone makes mistakes? Or did another voice immediately appear? How could you be so stupid? You'll never get this right. You're always messing things up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. That voice often didn't begin with you. Children aren't born criticizing themselves. They learn it, sometimes through constant criticism, sometimes through impossible expectations, sometimes through parents who believed achievement was the only path to worth. Over time, those external voices become internal. Psychologists call this internalization. The people who raised you may stop speaking, but your brain keeps replaying their words. Years later, your parents might not even be in the room anymore. Yet their expectations, their fears, their judgments still quietly influence your decisions. This is why some incredibly successful people never feel successful. No achievement feels enough. No promotion feels satisfying. No compliment lasts longer than a few minutes because they're chasing approval from a voice that can never truly be satisfied. But here's what separates the 8%. They eventually notice something extraordinary. Not every thought deserves to be believed. Just because a thought sounds familiar doesn't make it true. Instead of asking, "Why am I so hard on myself?" they begin asking, "Whose voice is this?" And sometimes, that single question changes everything, because the moment you recognize that your inner critic was inherited, you stop treating it like your identity. You start treating it like an old story, one that no longer has to become your future. But inherited voices aren't the only invisible patterns we carry. Some of the strongest ones don't live inside our thoughts at all. They live inside the decisions we make without even realizing why. Here's something most people never notice. The patterns you inherit don't only shape how you think, they shape what you tolerate. And that may be the biggest reason generations keep repeating the exact same emotional story. Mistake 3. They normalize what should never feel normal. Imagine a child growing up in a home where yelling happens almost every day. Doors slam. People stop talking for days. Love is followed by guilt. Affection is followed by control. Now imagine another child, raised in a home where disagreements happen, but respect never disappears. Years later, both become adults. Now here's the fascinating part. Neither of them consciously compares their childhood to anyone else's, because to them, their childhood wasn't strange. It was simply normal. Psychologists often describe this as normalization. The brain doesn't ask, "Is this healthy?" It asks, "Is this what I'm used to?" And that's a dangerous question, because what you're used to can quietly become what you accept. Some people normalize disrespect. Others normalize emotional neglect. Some normalize never expressing affection. Others normalize constant criticism. Without realizing it, they begin building adult lives around emotional rules they never consciously chose. You hear it all the time. That's just how relationships are. My father was like that too. Everyone loses their temper. Love is supposed to be hard. No, sometimes that's simply what your nervous system learned to expect. One of the greatest psychological breakthroughs happens the day someone asks, "Is this actually normal? Or is it just familiar?" Those two words change everything. Because what feels ordinary may actually be inherited pain. The people who break the cycle become willing to feel uncomfortable. They stop defending unhealthy patterns simply because they're old. They understand something most people never do. History explains your behavior. It doesn't excuse repeating it. But inherited patterns don't only influence what you accept. They also influence something even more invisible, the choices you make under pressure. And this is where psychology becomes truly fascinating. Mistake 4. They react automatically instead of responding. Intentionally. Think about the last argument you had. Maybe someone criticized you, ignored your message, questioned your opinion. What happened first? Did you choose your response? Or did your response choose you? Neuroscientists explain that before your logical brain fully processes a situation, your emotional brain has already started reacting, especially if the situation resembles something painful from your past. Imagine someone who grew up being constantly blamed. Years later, their partner gently says, "Can we talk about something that's bothering me?" Objectively, nothing dangerous has happened, but their nervous system doesn't hear curiosity. It hears attack. Within seconds, they're defending themselves. raising their voice, shutting down, walking away. Not because they're a bad person, because their brain isn't responding to the present. It's reacting to the past. Trauma researchers often describe this as emotional pattern matching. Your brain constantly scans the present, looking for pieces of yesterday. Sometimes it finds danger where none exists. Sometimes it creates conflict simply because conflict feels predictable. This explains why two people can experience the exact same situation, yet respond completely differently. One hears feedback, another hears rejection. One sees disagreement, another sees abandonment. The event is identical. The interpretation isn't. Here's what separates the 8%. They become students of their own reactions. Instead of immediately asking, why did they do that? They pause and ask something much more powerful. Why did this affect me so deeply? That tiny pause changes everything, because between a trigger and a reaction, there is a small space. Inside that space, cycles are broken. Inside that space, new generations are created. The people who escape their parents' mistakes don't have fewer emotional triggers. They simply stop allowing those triggers to make every decision for them. Every pause rewires the brain. Every conscious response teaches the nervous system. We're safe now. Little by little, the past loses its grip, not overnight, not perfectly, but permanently. By now, you might think breaking family patterns is about changing your behavior. But behavior is only the surface. The deepest pattern of all is something almost nobody notices until it's already controlling their entire life. Here's the truth that changes everything. Most people believe they're trapped because of what happened to them. But psychology suggests something different. People remain trapped because they unknowingly pass their pain forward instead of transforming it. And this is where the final two habits separate the 92% from the 8%. Mistake 5. They heal their pain, but never examine their beliefs. Many people think healing means feeling less pain. It doesn't. Real healing is seeing the invisible beliefs your pain created. Imagine a little boy who grows up hearing, money doesn't grow on trees. Rich people are selfish. Don't trust anyone. Life is nothing but struggle. Those sentences seem harmless. Years pass. He graduates, starts earning, builds relationships, makes adult decisions. Yet every major choice quietly passes through those invisible beliefs. When an opportunity appears, he hesitates. When success comes, he feels guilty. When someone genuinely loves him, he wonders what they want in return. Nothing outside is stopping him. His own unconscious beliefs are. Psychologists often describe these as core beliefs, the hidden assumptions your brain accepts as absolute truth. The strange part is, you rarely notice them. They're like the lens of a camera. You see the world through them, but almost never see the lens itself. This is why two people can experience the exact same setback and walk away with completely different conclusions. One thinks, I failed. The other thinks, I am a failure. Those two sentences sound almost identical. Psychologically, they're worlds apart. One describes an event, the other creates an identity. And identities become futures. The people who belong to that rare 8% eventually realize something remarkable. Not every belief they carry was chosen. Many were inherited. So instead of asking, why is my life like this? They begin asking, who taught me to see life this way? That question changes careers, changes marriages, changes parenting, changes generations, because once you question the belief, the cycle begins to weaken. But there is one final difference, the one that quietly determines whether your children will inherit your wisdom or your wounds. Mistake 6. They try to be better than their parents instead of becoming more aware than them. This may be the hardest truth in the entire video. Most people spend years saying, I'll never become my parents. But psychology suggests that's the wrong goal. Because fighting your past still keeps your attention locked on it. Think about it. Someone who constantly says, I will never be angry like my father, often becomes obsessed with suppressing anger. Eventually, that anger doesn't disappear. It simply leaks out differently. Another person says, "I'll never be emotionally distant like my mother." So they become overly available. They neglect themselves. They fear disappointing everyone. They swing to the opposite extreme. Different behavior, same unconscious control. The goal isn't becoming the opposite. The goal is becoming aware. Awareness is what interrupts automatic patterns. Awareness notices, "I'm reacting exactly like I used to." Awareness whispers, "This conversation isn't about today anymore." Awareness asks, "Is this my choice or my conditioning?" That single moment of awareness is where freedom begins. The people who break generational cycles don't wake up one morning completely healed. They still feel fear, still make mistakes, still lose patience, still get triggered. The difference is they notice it sooner. They apologize sooner. They reflect sooner. They grow sooner. And over years, those tiny moments create an entirely different life. Children don't learn from perfect parents. They learn from emotionally honest ones. Imagine growing up hearing a parent say, "I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm still learning." Those simple sentences teach something generations often failed to teach, that making mistakes isn't the problem. Refusing to learn from them is. Perhaps that's why the rarest people aren't those who never inherited unhealthy patterns. They're the ones courageous enough to stop passing them on. If you recognized yourself in some of these patterns today, don't see that as bad news. See it as evidence that your awareness is growing. Because you cannot change a pattern until you can see it. Your parents gave you many things. Some were beautiful. Some were painful. Most were completely unintentional. But here's the truth psychology reminds us of again and again. Your childhood may explain who you became, but it does not have to decide who you remain. Every moment of awareness, every healthier conversation, every time you choose understanding over automatic reaction, you're doing something much bigger than improving your own life. You're changing the emotional inheritance of everyone who comes after you. And maybe, years from now, your children won't remember every lesson you taught them, but they'll remember something even more important. They'll remember growing up with someone who had the courage to stop repeating the past and start creating a better future. Because in the end, the other 8% aren't extraordinary people. They're simply the people who stopped asking, "Why am I like this?" and started asking, "What kind of person do I want to become from this moment forward?" That is where every generation truly changes. So let me leave you with one final question. When your children, your partner, or the people closest to you remember you years from now, what will they inherit? Will they inherit your fears, or your courage, your silence, or your honesty, your wounds, or your healing? Because every generation passes something forward. The question isn't whether you'll leave something behind. The question is, what are you leaving behind today? Maybe, for the first time, you've realized that some of the struggles you've blamed yourself for were never entirely yours to begin with. They were patterns, stories, emotional habits that quietly traveled through generations, waiting for someone brave enough to stop carrying them. And maybe that someone is you. If this video helped you see yourself in a new way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Sometimes one conversation, one realization, or one moment of awareness is enough to change an entire family's future. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology behind human behavior, relationships, emotions, and the patterns that quietly shape our lives, make sure to subscribe to Psychology Origins and turn on notifications. Every week, we dive deep into the science of the mind, not just to understand why we think the way we do, but to help you become the person you were always capable of becoming. Until next time, stay curious, stay self-aware, and remember, the greatest inheritance you can ever give the next generation isn't money, success, or status. It's a healthier mind than the one you inherited.